record on this computer. Well, it says it's doing it. Hi, I'm Glynis Mary McManaman. I am a Good Shepherd sister, and I'm the executive director of Good Shepherd Arts Center. We started in Ferguson as a presence of peace, establishing the Arts Center there in 2015, 1 year after the shooting death of Michael Brown, with the intention to be a presence of peace in a troubled city. Originally a studio and gallery for religious art depicting racial diversity, the facility evolved into Good Shepherd Arts Center, GSAC. Now, as some of the younger people call it, and incorporated as a 501c3 in 2018. Our mission has been to exhibit art and offer experiences that affirm human dignity, that lift hearts, and that link creativity with spirituality in Ferguson. And I can broaden that to say North County. But our dedication is up in this part of the county, and particularly to Ferguson. Our core values are spirituality. That is, we believe that all persons have a connection to God as they understand God, and that art can lead to richer spiritual awareness. And we are interfaith. Individual worth. We believe in the intrinsic worth of each person and affirm all aspects of human diversity. Harmony. We do not promote political parties or agendas, religions, movements, or service groups. Our focus is art. Hospitality. While we can't welcome people into the gallery setting, which has been closed since the pandemic began, we do welcome you here into our virtual space. If you know of artists whose work is in tune with our mission and values, encourage them to submit a proposal, an exhibit theme and work samples along with a brief bio. We also will be seeking volunteers as we return to active duty as things loosen up with the pandemic. And so there will be some developments. So I'm very pleased to introduce Philip Deitch, who I think everybody here probably knows, but I'll introduce him anyway, just in case somebody doesn't. And I'm pleased to introduce, he is our January featured artist. Philip has regularly volunteered his time, energy, and photographic services to causes he is concerned with, in addition to documenting diverse aspects of daily life, including both people and places. His photos and videos have been used by over 300 not-for-profits and community-based organizations. They have also been seen in books, newspapers, magazines, documentaries, and movies, including on PBS. Philip has also grouped his photos and personal reflections into educational talks and articles on important moments in history. His collection now includes over 250,000 images, including many unique moments captured due to his being the only photographer allowed to be present. Philip has had a long history as a civil rights activist and diversity trainer since founding a civil rights club in the 8th grade. His education includes a master's degree in healthcare administration and training as a Jewish lay leader, along with certification in clinical pastoral education as a hospital chaplain. He has served on the board of directors or in a leadership position on over 50 not-for-profits, civil rights and community coalition on the local, state, and national level, and on many as a founding member. So, welcome, Philip. I am so grateful that I finally got to host you. I had hoped to host you in the living space, three-dimensional space, but glad to have you.
Somehow, Glennis, it seems right to do it this way, since half of the collection is about COVID. Mm-hmm. And we probably could show more photos this way than if I had to have them all printed and mounted and such. So
frames, all
this
that.
is good. And I just want to say thank you, Glennis, for the center. It was important to Ferguson, Florissant area when you opened. And I value you for what you have done in making that an important cultural contribution.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
And I have family and friends on. This is great.
Cool. This is a big
Hi, Stephen.
Party reunion. Hey. If you didn't notice, if you weren't on mute, I put you on mute, but you can take yourself off if you need to say something, just to make sure that we cut down on background noise. Also, if you're not familiar with Zoom, but how could we not? Most of us probably by now are almost tired of it, but there is a little up in the view. You can choose a gallery view and see everybody, including yourself, or you can choose a speaker view and whoever's speaking will be prominent on the screen. Very soon, I will share my screen, so you will see that. Okay. Okay. So I'm really curious. I mean, with all these photographs, Philip, how did you become interested in photography?
Well, it actually didn't hit me at the time, but looking back, I realized the earliest impact to me on the value of photography was my father. When I was in grade school, my father, who was a combat engineer in World War II, and he had entered one of the concentration camps shortly after its liberation, and he took photos. And he took photos throughout his military career. And he showed me those photos in grade school, along with the story to my sister and I that they had named us with middle names that didn't sound Jewish. So I'm Philip Lloyd and she's Marna Fran. And we were given the message in grade school that if anything like this ever happened, drop your last name, blend in and survive and fight another day. So of course, those photos were a beginning. That probably also influenced me, his always reading biographies. I became a history buff. During the Vietnam War and the civil rights movement of the 60s, the power of the photographs and the video we saw is what changed the country, is what taught us all what the truth was of what was going on. And that had a huge impact on me. I was particularly interested in the photos of Bob Fitch, who was a white man, a photographer, and Everett Withers, who was black, who were photographers who got to be with King in those secret places, private movements. And I always used to think, as a history buff, how wonderful to be a fly on the wall in those places. And I think all that added up. I took my first photos. We had a trip to Washington, D.C. about a year after Kennedy was assassinated. So I still have these original Polaroid pictures. My father always took Polaroid pictures of us as kids. And so I have that collection. And the first pictures I took was of the Kennedy gravesite. And it was only a year after his death. So it's not the monument that it is now. It was dirt. There wasn't even grass. There was just the flame. Wasn't a stone yet. And then on that same trip, we went to Colonial Williamsburg, Virginia. And I was so impressed. I think, third grade, I guess it would have been, or fourth grade. The Prime Minister of Malaysia was on a state visit and drove through on a carriage. And I got to take his picture. And I thought, wow, that's an important person. And to be close to important people, that's exciting. So, there was no pomp and circumstance. He was there. People said who he was. Word got around. But those are my earliest photos that I can remember taking.
That's great.
I must have been doing more, though, I guess, because my sister gave me as my bar mitzvah gift, and she gave it to me 2 months in advance. She gave me a Super 8 movie camera. And I said, well, why are you giving me a gift 2 months in advance? And Mom said, well, your sister is smart. She thinks you may want to practice with this before your bar mitzvah. Okay. So I did.
Right. Cool. You founded a civil rights club in the 8th grade at age, what, 13, 14?
14, yeah.
14. Was there a specific incident that inspired you to take that action?
Yeah, my father. My father. He was a labor attorney. We had grown up, as my cousin Stephen's on the call today, hearing some stories, though didn't hear them until later in life from our grandparents, who in their teens had grown up in the old Tsarist Russia in the 1800s and left as teenagers because of the pogrom. And it's a hard life. And so we got to hear some of those stories. And my father blessed memory, had been a labor attorney, and then became a manager of a big New York law firm, Rubenbaum and Levin. And he comes home one night and he says, family meeting, you know, my sister, my mother, and I. And he says, today was the proudest day of my life, other than when you kids were born. Today I got to meet our company, our firm's newest clients. And I got to spend all day sitting with the Reverend Dr. King, Mrs. Coretta King, and Reverend Ralph Abernathy. They had become their personal attorneys. Another civil rights activist who I would meet years later encouraged them to go to this firm so that they could take some of the burden off of his life, some of the personal burdens off of their lives. And so he came and he said, my sister and I, and he said, so, because that was all in the news. That was what you would see with civil rights news. He said, so this is what I'm doing for the cause. And he looks at myself in the 8th grade and my sister, who would have been in 5th grade, and says, what are you going to do? So I went into school the next day, and we had one teacher of color, Mrs. Brown. I think she was an English teacher. And I met with her, and the result was started a civil rights club. And I've sort of extended the topics I've worked on ever since then.
Wow. And somehow over the long haul, you actually got to be very involved in many aspects of civil rights all through your life. You style yourself as the president of the Sister Antona Ebo Fan Club. Oh. Tell us about how you met and how your relationship flourished.
Yeah, that's
I'm going to show some of the pictures you sent me of her. And if you want me to stop or go back at any point, let me know. But I'm going to see what I can do with the screen share.
I want to go back to the last question just for a minute, because I also want to honor the impact my mother had working on as a volunteer working on the Equal Rights Amendment, and an uncle that I had. He wasn't a blood uncle. He was my father's wartime buddy in the trenches in Europe. And he developed serious disease, Lou Gehrig's disease, and the stories he experienced developing a disability. So all those people around me, the work that they were doing just seemed like work that was a natural thing to be involved with, because I had faces connected to those issues. And it must have had a deep impact. My sister has become, as I have over the years, an activist in the LGBTQ community. And I'm so proud that 2 years ago, the Los Angeles Pride, which is the largest in the country, gave her their #1 award, the Melissa Etheridge Award, for her work there. And it's interesting because I was at the Clinton inaugural ball that the LGBT community had, and I got to photograph Melissa Etheridge when she first came out publicly. So I was able to find that picture, send it to my sister for her to give it to Melissa. So that made a nice tie into the photography also. So now you're asking me the question I can go talking on for hours, which is Sister Antona Ebo. It helps to have a little bit of history, and I hope you'll let me share some of that, since we are celebrating the King holiday observance. She took her vows originally in 1946, and this was when she was assigned to the St. Mary's Clinic in downtown St. Louis, which was only recently torn down. And I think someplace in there'll be a photo that I took of her a couple of years before she died. We went back to visit. There it is, taken on the same steps in the same doorway. The other photo is the only one in the collection that I didn't take, but I thought it was important to see the two of them together. As Sister will tell you, the story isn't a one-time thing. She was an inspiration. You know, in June 1964, Cheney, Goodwin, and Schwerner were murdered. Sister will always talk about in February of '65, Jimmy Lee Jackson was murdered by police in nearby Marion, outside of Selma, as he was trying to protect his mother, when they were doing voting rights work. And Sister would always raise Jimmy Lee Jackson's name up. Not long after that, in March, Dr. King would meet with President Johnson on Friday, March 5th. And then on Sunday, March 7th, we had Bloody Sunday down in Selma. King actually had stayed behind in Atlanta with Hosea Williams, representing the Southern Leadership Christian Association by a coin torch. And that would have been a photo I would have loved to have taken. But the day, so Bloody Sunday happened. Monday, King came to Selma. He put out a call for clergy to come from around the country for a march he would lead on Tuesday. That was a famous march where he crossed the bridge. They were blocked. He had everyone kneel down and pray, and they turned around. Well, St. Louis wasn't able to be at the march. They had gotten, the diocese here had to raise money and send 2 plane loads of people the following day on Wednesday. But just a couple of little things that occurred around that time about, again, the link to photography. Dr. King had scolded Life magazine because a couple of weeks earlier at the protests that had been occurring, protesters were knocked to the ground, and the photographer stopped taking pictures to help those who had been beaten. And King scolded them, saying, you know, what more important was to document this history, to get the public aware. We were willing to take on nonviolent and accept protest, but the public needed to see that. So he was particularly thrilled with the media coverage of Bloody Sunday, because he recognized the importance that film had for that time. So when Dr. King did march, though, and turned around that day, that same evening after the march, there was a UCC minister who had marched with him that day, James Reeb, who would be beaten and was unconscious that night. He would die 2 days later on Thursday. But on Wednesday, 2 planes from St. Louis came to Selma with 51 clergy and lay leaders, including 2 of our rabbis, Rabbi Lipnick and Rabbi Grolman, and 6 nuns, including Sister Ebo. Out of that entire group, she was the only person of color. And she would say she was scared about being there. She knew that even if they got arrested, she would be segregated not only from all the clergy, but from all the nuns, and kept separate from everybody else. So it was a powerful story. So on the anniversary of the murders of Cheney, Goodwin, and Schwerner, I was on the National Commission of Social Action for the Religious Action Center of Reform Judaism, United States and Canada. And these are a lot of pictures from Ferguson. And they worked with the NAACP to send a group buses to recreate the Freedom Rides. This was in 1999, to go to Selma to pray and to call on, I want to come back to that photo later, remind me.
Okay. I'm going to run through until we come to what we're talking about. You can just stop me when
this was the beginning of the Freedom Ride trip from St. Louis. And we had a big busload, thanks to Gwen Krim, who at that point had a leading role in the Civil Rights Office in the diocese. We took a busload of half adults and half youth to go to Selma. It was the first time Sister got a chance to cross the bridge. I guess I got off track. So on that day that the 2 planes from St. Louis arrived in Selma, because of Reverend Reeb's murder the night before, at that point he hadn't died, but they were afraid to even fly into the airport. So they landed on a farmer's field and crossed through the woods to get to the AME church where everyone had organized. Tried to walk again. So the delegation from St. Louis, this is Sister Ebo, the right person at the right place at the right time. So picture this, just 3 days after Bloody Sunday, the doors open up at the back of the church. Dr. King had left already. The community doesn't know what to do. There's a very young minister, newly minted, on the pulpit. The doors open up and the St. Louis group walks in. They knew they were coming. 51 was also the largest response from any city in the country to Dr. King's call. And the reverend at the pulpit looks down and he says, "We've been joined by a moral voice of our world." And he brings Sister Ebo up to the pulpit with the other nuns, and he sits her in what is the bishop's chair. She said she knew that from her Baptist upbringing. And then he invites her up to speak. And she wasn't expecting, of course, any of this. That young minister who called her, who connected with her that day, was Reverend Andrew Young. So again, the right person at the right time. She led the march. The people asked her to lead the march to try again, this time to go to the courthouse in Selma to try to get registered to vote. They were blocked. And Rabbi Lipnick, of blessed memory, said he had become her personal guardian, though she didn't know that. And he was ready to throw his body over hers if they got beaten that day. So tomorrow on St. Louis on the PBS network, one of the shows they're going to do is an interview with Sister Ebo and Rabbi Lipnick that was done when Jews United for Justice and the Missouri History Museum honored the two of them in an awards program that I had led. So I hope you get to see their interview. It's really wonderful. So anyway, when the NAACP and the RAC decided to bring these buses together, and Gwen got the money from the church to have a bus from here, I got to meet Sister Ebo that day at that photo that you saw on the steps of the what's now called the Griot Museum. They had not seen each other in 20 years, and that picture was caught just before one that the Post-Dispatch took of his putting his hands on her face and saying, "I know you." At this picture, they were just sort of recognizing each other. And she said, and she'll see in the interview if you watch it, said, "Who's this crazy white guy? What does he mean he knows me?" They hadn't seen each other in 30 years. And so it was quite a powerful trip. We went down. She got the first chance to march over the Pettus Bridge. She led us in prayer at the gravesite of Cheney Good, the murder site of Cheney, Goodwin, and Schwerner, and then led us at the gravesite of James Earl Cheney. Then the next day, we had a press conference with all these buses from around the country, and Sister led us in prayer and gave the first call for the state of Mississippi to finally bring murder charges for the murders of Cheney, Goodwin, and Schwerner. 5 years to the day. Gwen, you remember, you called me. You're the one that alerted me. 5 years to the day of Sister leading us in that press conference, a jury actually handed down a murder conviction. Her life was more than just coincidence. She was the right person at the right place at the right time, and I think chosen. She had that, certainly had that connection. I think she was certainly a spiritual being, and she became a mother figure for me and dear friend. And I was honored to be one of the people at her funeral to read from Isaiah, which was where she got her inspiration. Her life was such that right up to the very end of her life at 93, she was still doing advocacy work. I took her to Ferguson, which would have been, what, 2 years before she passed. And some of those pictures, one was of the, as people found out who she was, we showed up and there was a march going on. People came to the car to see her, to touch her, to shake her hand. These were two of the lead activists, and others active in the movement at a program we had honoring Ferguson activists at Central Reform Congregation. And then there's a photo of Captain Ron Johnson, who the governor had designated as highway patrol captain to be the head of the coordinated care. Ron, he said that day changed him. It changed his life. He used to do live press conferences every night during the Ferguson uprising. And he got on today and he said, "I had one of the most powerful experiences of my life today, getting to have time with Sister Antona Ebo in Ferguson. And he gave just down the block from where Michael Brown had been killed, murdered. He said, being with her again reminded me of two key things. One, that you don't get the chance to say, I did my part. As long as you're alive, you have to keep working on causes. You have to keep making the world a better place, as she was doing. And he said, you know, she's done that her whole life. Here she is, 90 years old. And then the other thing he said is, it reminded me how much further we still have to go with 50 years later after Selma. She is still having to be out here fighting. And he said that that broke his heart. So very powerful. The year before she died, Missouri had a amendment to allow constitutional fight to allow for the photo ID. And here is Sister. I have a photo of hers. I think maybe the last photo I took of her recording a public service announcement opposing that, bringing her whole life back together, basically saying, you know, 50 years ago, I marched in Selma for voting rights. And now, if this passes, because I don't have all the documentation of my birth and such, I may not get to vote anymore as I reach the end of my life. And called it out as a racist move, trying to limit the vote. So she gave her all. How could you not love her? How could you not be inspired by her?
Yeah.
Now, others may claim to, you know, lead her fan club, but I'm not giving up that mantle. I'm a self-declared president. So I arranged this opportunity for her and John Lewis to meet at Washington University. First time they had the chance to have a sit-down conversation, because he had been hospitalized after Bloody Sunday, and they hadn't met in all these years. So they had a chance to sit and talk and meet. And Sister, being as bold as she was, I think the next picture shows it. She turns to him at one point in the conversation. She says, "So, where is the scar of where you were hit on the head?" And so I have these photos of the two of them showing each other from violence that they experienced in the civil rights movement, where each of them had scars, and he's pointing to the top of her head, she's pointing to her forehead. This was when she got the chance to walk across the Pettus Bridge, the Mary Meacham crossing. She was invited during one of the anniversaries. With her, I should point out, in the blue shirt was Cheney's a younger brother, and to the right in the black dress was Barbara, who was a cousin of Michael Schwerner. So the three of them led us in marching across the Pettus Bridge as part of Freedom Ride 99. Mary
I don't think I have the one of them showing each other's
their scars. Okay, I think it may have been one of the newer folders.
Okay, I may have missed that.
This was the murder site.
Yes.
The other one was the murder site of Cheney Goodwin Schwerner, which was still a dirt road in the middle of nowhere. And we sent the kids to, we had told everyone to bring a little pebble from their home from around the country and built that memorial. And we sent the kids off to grab flowers from the woods. We were all in the motel that night in Philadelphia, Mississippi, watching the news. There was a local TV crew, of camera crew, that followed us. It became very scary. The camera crew followed us all that day and then went back to the murder site. They said, "We thought it would be good to show this little monument, the first ever built to the three gentlemen, and show you that monument at sunset." But it wasn't there anymore. People in the community had thrown every pebble and rock off into the woods, had even brushed away the tire tracks of these major buses that we had. They would not allow any indication that we were there. I remember, and Gwen could share, that it scared our kids particularly. That they said that that meant people were following us. That meant people were hiding in the woods while we were there. And it had an extremely powerful impact. You can't see it in this picture, but behind Cheney's tombstone are iron poles because it had been blown up and broken 3 different times. So now there were iron braces holding that tombstone in place. It's also at a corner of the cemetery away from any others because they were afraid of damage being done to other grave sites in his cemetery. So,
Yeah, so you shared
anyone has
about
questions, jump in, please. Yeah.
Okay, at any time, feel free. I was going to say, you shared about 200 pictures with me, which we put into news at the front, news from the front. And I was challenged to select a manageable number. As with this, you have so many excellent pictures. And I chose many pictures with frontline workers, not just the medical personnel, but also the postal worker, the bus driver, volunteers, construction worker, and even the guy that sanitized the shopping carts, which we just kind of take for granted. Please talk about your experience documenting the pandemic over this past year. And tell me about pictures you would have chosen. I'll go through these just, but tell us about the pictures that you might have chosen that I didn't choose, if you can.
I probably ended up with close to 3,000 photos. And I was just trying to capture a lot of what I try to do with my photography is just be able to do storytelling, which is a skill I learned from January Kiefer, who's on the call. And I've tried to do it with my photos and just give a sense for people who aren't there what it was like to be present at any of these moments, and to be able to walk through and feel, not as a news photographer does to get something in the paper the next day, but to be able to, in retrospect, be able to look back at an experience or a historical moment. So a lot of the other photos, we decided to focus on the people, which I think is most appropriate as we're entering the King weekend, to focus on the people who do the work, who take the stand, who are the brave ones. But other photos included the people doing the wheelies downtown in St. Louis, or the empty highways at rush hour. I took a series of photos of parking lots, empty parking lots at the universities and large businesses, contrasting with photos at the hospital parking lots, which were overflowing at the time. So just trying to get a sense and a feel for what the mood was. Photos that I took of masks laying in the streets, or of masks hanging from the rearview mirror in cars, how it all just sort of came together. I have several photos of funeral parlors that were empty because back then, in the beginning, and I'm not sure that it's changed, you couldn't go you couldn't have funerals. So the funeral parlors were closed, and an eerie time with all the death around us to see empty parking lots in funeral parlors. And despite that, the efforts here of the Red Cross trying to raise greatly needed blood supplies at a time that people were scared to walk out of their houses. So I wanted to honor the work that different groups were doing. So.
We take so many people for granted that have had to stay out there working so that we can live, so that.
I have a picture, I don't think it's in this collection, of entering the Schnucks on South Grand. And there were all these children that had had created thank you cards out of construction paper and glue and just thanking the workers for being there. We're still fighting that fight, and again, you know, the story of Dr. King and Sister Ebo, and is we have to care for each other. We
Mhm.
have to step forward and we have to care. There has to be the beloved community, the caring community. It takes each of us to be the power of one to accomplish that. But we have to be supporting each other. And that didn't happen from
Yeah.
our government over
Right.
this last year.
Right.
Uh,
It's,
we lost way more people than we had anywhere near necessary to have lost. And so there was another, you know, and I also think about the photo moments that I was not able to take.
mhm.
And the one that stands out for me goes back to Sister Ebo.
Mhm.
Uh, it was, she was invited, and it's a long story, but she had been invited by Congressman Lewis to come down to do his every biannual march across the Pettus Bridge that he takes members of Congress on. And it got canceled that year. And so she wasn't able to go, and she happened to be home. And the week before an event occurred, she got a call, which I sort of pushed to have happen, for her to give the invocation at a dinner that
Mhm.
Senator McCaskill was having here in St. Louis as a fundraiser. And so she was home. She happened to be in town, was able to go to this event, give the keynote. I couldn't afford to buy a ticket. They wouldn't give me a press card to attend. They said security is going to be tight. The President Obama is going to be there. And so the White House Corps, they'll take pictures of Sister Ebo being there and giving the kid. And I pushed hard and pushed hard. And so
Mhm.
one time, my pushing didn't work. And those that know me know that I will try to keep finding ways to get it done. I couldn't get it done. Sister Ebo got a kiss on the cheek from President Obama.
Mm,
Nobody took the photo.
thank you for the picture.
There's no
Okay.
photo of that. So number one, that alone would have been great.
Yeah.
But more important, on the website, I don't know if we included that article. I wrote an article for the Beacon, which has now been merged with the PBS station. It's an
Mm.
online newspaper.
I don't think I did put that one in.
So talk about Sister, right person, right place, right time.
Mm,
She was on stage at around 5:30, 6 o'clock here in St. Louis. And she said, 50 years ago today
mhm.
was the day I was in Selma.
Wow.
And this hour is the hour we were coming back off of the plane, stepping down at Lambert Airport.
Mhm.
And here I am standing on the stage giving an invocation for President Obama. The power of that history
Mhm.
should have been captured in a photo. I mean, she contributed to his being our president, as did the others who stepped forward in the civil rights movement. And so those are the moments I try to capture and raise up.
Mhm. You didn't get to be in that one, to get into that one event, but there's been a lot of events you've been in that no other photographer could get into.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Particularly, I mean, the ones that stand out the most are during the Ferguson uprising,
Mhm.
where there was so many organizing meetings, small group meetings
Mhm.
with key officials that were not open to the public.
Okay.
One, because we didn't want media attention to them,
Right.
and two, we didn't trust a lot of media or professional photographers, didn't know what their connections might be behind the scenes with police and law
Mhm.
enforcement.
Yeah.
But these were groups and people that I had worked with in other ways over the years. So I was able to be there, and they knew that photos I would take would not be made public and available in the newspaper the next day,
Mhm.
that they would be kept for historical purposes. And part of my hope, my goal, my dream is to create an expanded website with all 250,000 photos, but also
Woo.
going back and getting the stories from the people who were in them,
Mhm.
to be able to have a living history site. Uh, like I said, it's more of a dream than a possibility that I could see happening at the moment. But that's where I want to go in my future, is working on something like that.
If I can help. Oh, we've got a This is from Sister Judy Bell asking, Philip, did no press association send you a copy of that picture?
No, I tried real hard. I tried with the White House. I contacted every member who was from the traveling press with the president. They just didn't get that photo.
Oh,
and so I wish there was a way to reach out to everyone who was in the audience in case anyone took one, but I not been able to figure out how to do that.
Mm-hmm.
So if anyone knows anyone who was at the Senator McCaskill event with President Obama, want to spread the word.
Yes.
And I've had funny, interesting times with photos. I was when President Clinton was elected, for the first time ever, an LGBT group was included in the official inaugural celebration. And that was the LGBT Bands of America because of Clinton's saxophone playing. That became a group that was invited for the first time. And because I had done work with them before, I was invited to be their photographer participating at the inauguration. And here we were right at the end of Pennsylvania Avenue, right before the motorcade would have turned into the White House at the end of the inaugural parade, which was like the most honored position to be in with the band set up. And right before that, at the end of the block, President Clinton's limo stops and he gets out of the car with Hillary and they start walking the last 2 blocks of the inauguration parade. Well, here I am positioned with the band and the president's coming down the street, and I get my camera ready and I'm lined up ready to take this photo, and a Secret Service agent walks right in front of me. And I said, oh my gosh, Secret Service agent, could you please take a step to the side? I'm trying to shoot the president. So he turned around. The president is in blur, but the Secret Service agent is real clear as I shook a little bit taking that picture. So it's one of my favorite pictures, but I'm not sure what would have happened today if someone tried saying, right? So, there've been moments. I was also able to, I was right under the stand where President Obama, when he spoke in Selma on the 50th anniversary, and Sister Ebo was there as a guest of the White House. And Ruby is on the call. Ruby was Sister Ebo's escort for that, and got to spend all that time with her in Selma, where she got a national award, the heroine of the voting rights movement. And I'm taking all these photos and have my powerful camera in the middle of the White House press corps, and I'm photographing President Obama. He had just finished speaking, or just started to speak, with President Bush on his one side and Congressman Lewis on the other, and my camera stops working. And my best moment in my photo history, and my camera doesn't work, and other photographers are giving me different lenses and batteries and trying to help me out. So I ended up taking photos using my cell phone. Not the best pictures, not the best quality, but at least that was my backup at the time.
And get encouraged, if anybody would like to ask a direct question, just take yourself off of mute. Feel free to jump in.
I spoke way longer than I thought. Sorry, everybody.
No, yes, it was wonderful. I was grateful.
I'm not going to ask a question. I just want to thank you. You have been there in so many important places and times in our lives in this community, and we just owe you so much. So I just really want to give you, just tell you that we're filled with gratitude for what you do.
Amen. Thank you.
Thank you both.
Philip, it's Eileen Wolfington.
Yeah.
Earlier, when you said it was,
you've been one of my photo subjects with everything you've done also.
Thank you. You mentioned that you couldn't afford to buy a ticket to the event where Sister Ebo was. And I think maybe you said Obama was here, or Clinton.
Obama, yeah.
Okay. You are so loved in this community and humble. So that's probably why you didn't do that. But going forward, if that ever happens again, I think if you contacted not only this group, but people beyond this group and said, wow, I have this opportunity and I just can't afford it. You never know how many people would probably come forward just so that you could be there. I'll tell you, I would move the stars for you. So just know that I think I'm not alone the way that I feel, that if that ever happens again, where you could miss a historic moment, there are so many people in this community that have much more power than we do, you know, beyond the power that God has given us in our faiths or whatever source we believe in. But there are some powerful people out there. If those of us who would have access, you know, to get you in the places where you need to go, your reputation precedes itself. So just keep that in mind.
Thank you. Thank you.
You know, it's funny when you said that. You probably recognize the name Maddie Moore. She
Sure,
worked
knew
here at
Patty.
Senator
Yeah.
McCaskill. When Obama was in town before his election, and she said she was going, I was ecstatic for her. I said, take a picture and bring one back to me. One of her staff couldn't go. And at the last minute, she called me and offered me the ticket.
Ah,
I'll tell you, if I knew, had I known what you were, you know, had I thought of you in that moment, I would have gladly passed it on to you. Because,
well,
yeah,
think of who was there. Maybe somebody with a camera.
I'll talk to her.
Yeah.
Okay. Good to see you. Great
Oh,
photographs
thank you for
and
that.
great stories. I hope your dream of putting a website together comes true for all those who aren't present today to be able to read the narratives under each photograph. Valuable
Appreciate
information.
it. So
Mm.
wow, I didn't
Yeah.
expect any comments back like that. Thank you both, Eileen, Marilyn, all the rest of you, my friends, family who are on the call. This is I've never had an art show and never had to talk about what I do in photography. So it was helpful for me to get my own thoughts together and to do this. And I appreciate you all. And I just want to thank you all for being here. This
Thank
is the
you.
beloved community. Everyone on this call I know and have been so critical for moving community forward. And that's what we all have to keep doing. And so I also want to thank Glynis and hope that you all sign up to follow what she's doing with the gallery and get on her contact list and contribute to support her work, which is has been so critical to raising up again Ferguson, Florida, and the whole North County area, which has gone through so much, helped change the country. And she's one of those people that's helped restoring that community to its glory and strength. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing your photography. I remember when we first met, we had been talking about this for some time. And you're right, it was the right moment for this to come together. Indeed. So and talk to me more about the website in the future. At least I can give you a few tips. If I can't help, I might be able to help you, but I can definitely give you some of my own experience of having to work with the website. Again, if you are not on our mailing list and would like to be, leave your email in the chat. I certainly do have a number of these emails from folks who asked for the link, but I don't want to presume. So please let me know if you would like me to add you to our mailing list, and I would be happy to do that. You're not going to get inundated. I send out a newsletter once a month or every other month when I have something to share. And of course, when we change exhibits, we let you know. And if we have a wonderful event like today's, you get that heads up and the link and everything directly. So thank you all for joining us today. Have a great day tomorrow as well as this evening. And thank you just so much.
Be blessed, everyone.
That's right. Blessing. And I'll take it.
You did a great job, Philip.
Thank you, January.
It's really been, it was just beautiful, just so clear and chronological. I love that you honored your parents. That always means so much when we recognize that this is a generational gift that we keep going.
Yeah.
So thank you. You did great. And thank you to you also, Glynis.
Sure thing. Thank you.
You're a blessing.